It's Friday, and it's a little after 6 o'clock here in Chicago, which means on the Steve Cortes Show, it's Happiness Hour. What does that mean? Well, it means we're going to take a turn from politics. We're going to talk about the things that can create a happy life for you. Some of them are very serious, things like faith and psychology. Some of them are sort of silly. Some are in between. And I guess we'd put this coming conversation in the in-between category. We're going to talk about films. And by the way, with weather like this in Chicago, might be a good weekend to watch movies. Perhaps more at your house than going out to the movie theater. But regardless, it seems like it's sort of film season as we lead up to the Oscars. And to help us discuss film, because this is certainly not my area of expertise, we have a fantastic guest with us, Mr. Jacob Airey. Please follow him on social media. It's at Real Jacob, and then it's Airey. He is a film reviewer in part for Daily Wire, which is a fantastic publication. And Jacob, before we get into talking about, I know we're going to talk about a couple films, Bombshell, Jojo Rabbit, as well as the upcoming Oscars. Before we get into that, when I read your Twitter bio, I'm always fascinated what people put in their bio because you don't get much verbiage there to say who you are to the world. You say you are a Christian conservative Texan nerd. Christian conservative Texan nerd. I love that. How does a Christian conservative Texas nerd end up in Los Angeles reviewing movies? What's your story? What brought you there?
Well, it was actually just kind of a step out in faith. My wife and I were living in Texas. I was a children's pastor, actually, at the time. And I decided to pursue a career in social media, primarily social media marketing. And then when I got to L.A., I just thought, you know what, I'm going to try my hand at writing some movie reviews. And so I started a blog where I put a lot of movie reviews. And as you said, the Daily Wire let me publish a few movie reviews for them as well. So that's the very short version of that story.
Right. Okay.
But yeah.
But fascinating, really. So you were a youth pastor who at first started this as a side gig, a side hustle, and then you turned it into your full-time job reviewing movies.
Basically, yes.
Okay.
It's more. I review a bunch of stuff: movies, comic books. I even do TV shows.
Okay.
So,
entertainment,
yeah,
more broadly.
basically pop culture. Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha. Entertainment, pop culture. Okay, wonderful. Well, listen, let's get into some movies that are out now and talk about them. And we really want to get your thoughts for the listeners, and then we'll talk about the Oscars, the upcoming Oscars and nominations after that. So the first one, Bombshell. And this one, I haven't seen it yet. I do really want to see it. Number one, the trailers are fantastic. I mean, I think. I want to hear your opinion on that as a professional. But I think, as an amateur, as a layman who doesn't really know movies other than just, consuming them like the rest of, regular folks, I think the trailers are incredible for Bombshell. But I will also tell you on a personal level, I used to work for Fox News, and I'm just intrigued with the story because of my personal experience with Fox. And I'll also tell you, which is interesting, I know a lot of folks at Fox who wouldn't say this publicly, but I know a lot of folks there who knew Roger Ailes very, very well when he was still running Fox and when he was still alive. And to this day, there is a sizable contingent of Fox, believe it or not, who at least privately will still completely stick up for Roger Ailes. So I think the film is obviously pretty damning of him and makes him look like a monster, and a lot of the evidence certainly seems to back that up. But it's fascinating to me that at least on a personal level, there's a number of people whom I respect who at least privately, don't see it that way, which is fascinating. But tell me about the movie. Tell me about Bombshell. Is it more than just a fantastic cast, with some great actresses who happen to be amazingly good looking? Is it more than that? Is it artistically good?
It actually is very good, and I have to say, it's all three of the main actresses, from Nicole Kidman to Charlize Theron to Margot Robbie, fantastic performances. John Lithgow as Roger Ailes. I honestly, I know very few people at Fox News, but I can tell you, John Lithgow as Roger Ailes, he was fantastic in that role. And the movie is really good. I did have two kind of qualms with it. The first is it can't really decide if it likes Megyn Kelly or Gretchen Carlson. Now, I'm talking about the characters, mind you, not
right.
No, when I'm speaking of this, I'm speaking of the movie specifically.
Sure.
I don't know Mrs. Carlson or Mrs. Kelly, but in the movie, it seemed like they couldn't really decide if they liked them because they're the ones who kind of, helped blow the lid on the stuff that was going on that Roger Ailes was involved in. But also the director seemed to be like, well, I don't want people to like them too much. And so it wasn't like a character arc where you slowly watch them evolve. It was like it would ping pong. So like 1 minute Megyn Kelly is, she's speaking truth to power, and then in the next minute they kind of make her seem opportunistic. And it just as a viewer, I was very confused by this. I was like, wait, do we like Megyn Kelly now or do we not?
Right.
And but outside, and then my second one was kind of the fictional characters, because they're fiction. It kind of takes you out of the movie a little bit, and I thought that it kind of did a disservice to the story that they use fictional characters to kind of show, like, I guess, quote, the worst side of Fox News.
Okay.
In the film context, I mean.
Right.
And I think that kind of did a disservice to the story and on the whistleblowing. That's just my personal opinion. But as far as the rest of the film, fantastic music score, fantastic acting. And again, I just want to especially applaud the three main women behind the story. They were phenomenal. Their job as actors and actresses. I definitely applaud them. They are. I honestly think that one of them deserves. I can't remember one of them was nominated for Best Actress. I can't remember which one, but they definitely deserve it for that role.
Okay, but just so we're clear too, so you're saying that they intermix fictional characters with the real characters, with people like Gretchen Carlson and Megan Fox, or not Megan Fox, Megyn Kelly.
Right.
Okay.
Margot Robbie and Margot Robbie's character, she was a fictional. I believe they said she was a composite of characters. And knowing that going into it, you're kind of like, because they use her character to kind of show the worst of the allegations against Roger Ellsworth.
Okay.
But you're kind of like, but she's a fictional character, so this could really just be made up, even though Okay. Maybe it wasn't.
Sure. By the way, Margot Robbie has now come up twice during the Steve Cortes Show today. That's extremely rare. I brought her up in the first hour because I was talking about The Big Short, which I think is actually a fantastic movie that explains a really difficult and arcane subject and does it extremely in a very entertaining way. But I was joking that one of the reasons it's so entertaining is because, well, you put Margot Robbie in a bathtub and anything seems pretty entertaining. So we've now brought her up twice in the Steve Cortes Show. This is a political show, so this doesn't happen very often, Jacob. All right, let's get to the next. But this is not the political hour. This is the happiness hour. And sometimes politics don't make people happy. They tend to make me happy, but not a lot of other folks. So let's get to the next movie, Jojo Rabbit. So another unusual movie, right, in that trying to be light, but in the context of Nazism. So can you tell us about the movie and then your thoughts on it?
Yeah, it's about this little boy named Jojo, and he is joining Hitler's youth at the end of the war. And he is all caught up in Nazism. He just thinks it's fantastic. He hates the Jews and all of this. And his imaginary friend is like this idealistic version of Hitler. And he goes through the whole movie where he has conversations with Hitler. And a lot of people were trying to claim it. So the right was trying to claim it and the left was trying to claim it. But I actually think, surprisingly, it's a movie that's just down the middle. It's definitely anti-extremes. Okay. But I don't feel like it was. I remember I read one conservative reviewer who said it was anti-Trump. I didn't get that at all. Hitler never dropped the Trumpism, quote. Right. It's to me, it was just pure comedy and interlaced with the story of how extremism can hurt a country or hurt a person individually. But to me, it went out of its way. I don't want to give away any spoilers, but to me, it went out of its way to be pro-American, which really surprised me because I know the director, Taki Waititi, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I know he's Australian. So, but I really enjoyed the film. I laughed all the way through it. It kind of slaps you in the face with the reality of World War II towards the climax of the film. But they do it in such a way where you go where it's not just for shock value. Like It's actually a meaningful transition into the story.
Okay. Now it's about a boy. Is it appropriate for children or no?
I would say no. It's got a lot of violence. It's got a lot of foul language. So if you're a parent, maybe watch it after the kids go to bed. Unless you've got teenagers, I think it's fine for teenagers.
Understood. Okay, so I read a review from The Guardian, and they said Jojo Rabbit fails to attack or even really notice evil. You think they're being too harsh on the film? the Guardian.
I think they are being too harsh. To me, it shows the absurdity of evil ideology.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's what the central story of it is.
Okay.
It just shows you how ridiculous it is.
In that way, does he? Because I haven't seen this movie yet, but is it evocative of Life is Beautiful? Is there sort of a Roberto Benigni aspect to this? Because to me, that was a wonderful film, right? That showed a lot of beauty within the midst of insane evil. Do you think is Jojo Rabbit in that same vein?
Well, I have actually not seen Life is Beautiful, so I couldn't tell you.
Jacob.
But I know. I know. I cannot make that comparison. But I would say
we're going to dock your pay, all right? We pay you nothing a month for these appearances, and we're going to dock your pay. But okay, so.
That's fair enough. But
well, that's your homework. By the next time you come back on the Steve Cortes Show to review a film, you will have seen Life is Beautiful. No, and listen, I am no film reviewer, but I thought it was a beautiful film, actually. Very sad, and but poignant. And all right, well, listen, we can step away from the sort of both very serious films, right, in their own way, Bombshell and Jojo Rabbit, and let's talk about sort of silliness of Tinseltown, the Oscars, up next. It's Friday, and it's 6:21, which means we're in the middle of the happiness hour on the Steve Cortes Show. The happiness hour is when we talk about things non-political, things that will make your life better, whether in a fun and frivolous way or in a profound and serious way. And right now we're talking about the movies. Might be a real movie weekend because the weather in Chicago is dreadful. My guest, Jacob Airy, lives in Los Angeles, so we hate him for that right now because there's a terrible blizzard hitting Chicago at rush hour right now. A lot of my listeners are stuck in it, but hey, let's give them the diversion of the movies. That's a lot of what movies are supposed to be about, right, in our society. So turning now, we reviewed a couple movies that are out presently. Now let's turn to the Oscars, Jacob. A lot of people like to play sort of Oscars drinking games, right? By the way, if anybody had been playing, I don't think anybody plays drinking games at the Steve Cortes Show, but if they had and they had Margot Robbie, they've already had to drink twice and they would have never guessed they'd even have to touch their lips with Margot Robbie. But anyway, and it came up organically. I didn't force it the second time. But do you play Oscar drinking games? And if so, what are some of the drinking cues that you would use?
I would use intersectionality.
Oh, boy.
I would use the word choose. It doesn't even matter the context. They use it for everything.
Right.
I would use Me Too, Time's Up.
Oh, boy.
And also, just as a whole, Oscar's So White. That's my personal favorite.
Okay. Like that one better. Because, again, I'm trying to not be political here, Jacob. So you're trying to drag me in, right? Like Michael Corleone in, what was that, Godfather 3, right? When he said they keep pulling me back in. Okay.
Right, yes.
Regarding the telecast, before we get to the nominees, regarding the actual telecast, what do you think, since ousting Kevin Hart, and that was obviously controversial, I don't want to get into that, though, but do you think, is it better or worse without a host? What do you think?
I actually personally think it's about the same because even with a host, they still have different entertainers coming up during the telecast to do presentations or to do interruptions. And the only thing the host kind of provided was kind of a cohesiveness. So, we saw this Seth MacFarlane and Chris Rock and Jimmy Kimmel. I guess you can give him credit for that. But without the host, all you really have are just some transitions. So I honestly feel it's about the same. I didn't even really notice a difference.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay. See, I wouldn't know because I haven't watched in years because I just can't take the sermons. I really can't, particularly from them. But again,
right.
I don't want to get into that right now. Let's get to the picks, though, because I do listen. I will tell you this, even though I don't watch the telecast, I pay a lot of attention to the nominations, and to who wins. I think it matters, at least for my personal movie selection and probably for a lot of people, even people who don't particularly care for the award show itself. So put on your prognostication hat right now. You're going to be the movie version of Jimmy the Greek. Looking at your picture, you're too young probably to remember Jimmy the Greek. He was a football forecaster way back from the 70s and 1980s. You probably don't remember him, but you get my point. We want you to pick the winners here. So, best picture. Let's start there. Who's going to win and why?
I honestly think The Irishman is going to win, and I controversially did not like that movie. I wrote very poorly about it on my blog, and I had a lot of people come after me, but I actually did not like the film.
Is it just because you don't like Irish people, Jacob?
I actually am Irish, so no, not
But you
exactly.
could still not like Irish people.
Fair enough. No, I just thought it was poorly edited. It was way too long. There were whole sequences that could have been cut. The movie could have been 2.5 hours, and then I think it would have been fine.
Okay.
But I actually heard recently that the film was actually 4 hours, but Netflix made him cut it down to 3.5. But I think he's going to win because they do this thing with some of the old school Hollywood directors where it's their turn. And I think for Scorsese, they're going to say it's his turn to win. Now, I could be wrong, and 1917 or Joker, they're both dark horses in this.
Mm-hmm.
They could pull it up, but that is my feeling that The Irishman is going to take it home. And I could be completely wrong, but just my gut tells me that, because we don't really have an intersectional movie this time around.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
We
had with...
Right. There's not a sort of
like
sermon movie that, is supposed to make us feel awful, particularly if you happen to be a white Christian conservative.
Right,
There's
exactly.
not one of those movies.
It seems like they actually thought these are movies that people enjoyed. I mean, they've got Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which I have not seen yet, but I hear it's good. Ford versus Ferrari, also a good pick. I do think that they should have traded Little Women for Richard Jewell, which I think is the best film of the year, but it didn't get nominated.
Okay, well, and I was going to ask you that.
But,
okay, so in terms of what was snubbed, you think it was Richard Jewell? And tell us why, please.
Richard Jewell, I think Clint Eastwood told such a sharp story about how the media and the government can just take over someone's life, and not always for the good. And in fact, in Richard Jewell's case, for those who don't know the story, definitely Google it. It's an amazing tale.
No, it's jarring. It really
they just destroyed this guy's life, and the performances in the film. Sam Rockwell, especially, he played Richard Jewell's lawyer. Fantastic. Kathy Bates is in it. She plays Richard Jewell's mom. Another fantastic performance.
By the way, how is Clint Eastwood still directing this stuff? I mean, he's 1,000 years old. He's like Methuselah, isn't he?
Well, yeah, and they actually said while they were editing the film, the fires were going on, and one was heading toward WB Studios, and they told him, Clint, you have to get out. We have to direct, and he told them, get out. I've got work to do. So
really.
Yeah, that's an apocryphal story that I've been hearing going around.
Wow. Okay, cool. Now, how about Best Actor and Best Actress? Who's going to win those two?
Well, that one is a little bit trickier because, there again, the end of the year, you have a lot of really great films that just kind of came out of nowhere. Mm-hmm. But my feeling is that Joaquin Phoenix is going to win for Joker. I think they're going to recognize his performance, that either him or maybe Adam Driver for Marriage Story, just because it was kind of one of those lecturing films.
Okay.
But I feel like it's going to be Joaquin Phoenix because that performance was just so hard to ignore.
Yeah, he's an amazing actor. Strange guy, but a heck of an actor. And how about Best Actress?
Yeah.
For those of us who believe that sex is binary anyway, how about Best Actress?
I would like to see, this is me personally, I really would like to see Cynthia Erivo win for Harriet. Fantastic film, amazing film. I would personally like to see her win, and I think that she has the strongest chance. But I also am suspicious that I am hoping I'm pronouncing her name correctly, but Saoirse Ronan for Little Women. I think they're going to try to just give a wink and a nod to this film, even though fans of the book didn't really care for it. Okay. But I think that they're going to, but because it's one of these movies that are important.
It's sort of important, right? Yeah, they try to make those statements. All right, listen, Jacob, you've been great. Let me get you out of here on this, though. You put out a top 10 list of ruin a movie in one-word tweets, which is a hashtag that gets popular. Ruin a movie with one word, and you put a bunch of them out there, which I think are hilarious. My favorite one by far was Lawrence of America, which became Martin Lawrence, or excuse me, Lawrence of Arabia, which became Martin Lawrence of Arabia. Fantastic. Do you have a favorite of this list you put out of how to ruin a movie with one word?
I do. A friend of mine, she tweeted out just Disney, and I don't think she meant that Disney is making bad films, but just that they're taking over everything. It's like a friend of mine, Rosemary Dewar. she threw that one out there, and I thought that was kind of funny, especially with it was around the time when the Last Jedi was, or excuse me, the Rise of Skywalker was coming out.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of that one definitely made me chuckle when I first saw it.
Excellent. Well, listen, Jacob Berry, I sure appreciate you being with us. Have a wonderful weekend, and we're going to turn to matters of faith up next.